Welcome to the Get to Know Your IDA podcast. I'm Robbie Ann McPherson from the Erie County Industrial Development Agency in Buffalo, New York. And we have a wonderful guest today, Mr. CONOR ECKERT from the Montgomery IDA. Welcome, CONOR.
Robbie, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this important conversation.
Thank you for participating in it, because I think the more we have these conversations and share them with the communities where we work, I think that we can maybe change some incorrect thinking about IDAs and what they provide for the community.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's right. IDAs are complicated, their structure, their powers, the projects we take on. So having this kind of an open dialogue, I think can serve an important purpose in what we do in economic development, but also engaging the public, educating the public, and trying to tell the right story about IDAs and the good stories of IDAs.
Agreed. I think that's something as agencies we can all look at, maybe trying to tell our story a little bit better. So we're hoping that this podcast contributes to improving some understandings. So I'm just looking at your background here. You're the executive director of the Town of Montgomery Industrial Development Agency, and you're what we call up here in Buffalo a downstater. So tell me a little bit about the Town of Montgomery and how the IDA functions there.
Sure thing. So the Town of Montgomery is located in Orange County, New York. We're around 70 miles from New York City. We have proximity to New Jersey and Connecticut and really the New York metro area. And we've been called the transportation hub of the Northeast. And that has perpetuated a lot of the town's success and really in part has driven the need for an IDA. I mean, we've worked on projects like United Natural Foods, Cardinal Healthcare, Amazon, the list goes on, UPS, FedEx, a good amount of logistics, distribution. We've done some manufacturing and professional services, but the town, because of its strategic location in the Mid-Hudson with proximity to these major markets, we've seen pretty robust economic development success and job creation success. And the way we run our IDA is, as the executive director, I lead the business attraction efforts, the expansion and retention. And as you know, on the IDA side, we facilitate IDA projects, whether that be payment in lieu of taxes, sales tax and mortgage recording tax exemptions, as well as the bond transactions. So it's the economic development, it's facilitating the deals and the projects, and of recent, really engaging the community. And I'm excited to talk about that a little bit more, but I've made it a priority of our organization to really be more active in the community, to do a better job of telling our story and engaging and educating to the extent we can, because that makes for a stronger economic development community locally. And it also helps our efforts to attract companies when we have a community that understands the importance of an IDA in these projects.
Yes, I think that is one of the magic ingredients of economic development success, right? Is when the community is on board, because realistically, they're our end user, right? Our businesses are our clients, but we are there to help the community grow economically and to benefit them, make sure that everyone has the best lifestyle that they can have, and that there are enough jobs available, et cetera, enough tax base. So you and I have had a conversation before about some of the efforts that you're undergoing or undertaking with a better message delivery. And one of them that you mentioned to me was some videos that you're using. So not just your typical, let's face it, economic development is kind of dry, right? I mean, it's not like the most entertaining topic in the world. So tell me a little bit about how you're making it more palatable, I guess, or more more interesting for people to say, oh, okay, that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, so we adopted sort of a three-pronged approach to engaging the public. One is head-on grassroots engagement. So I started doing something called coffee and conversations, where I'll go to a local coffee shop within the town or within the three villages within the town, post the date and time on Facebook and the paper, and it's an open invite where we can have a real, genuine conversation about what the idea is, why it's important, what we do, the powers we have, because there's so many misconceptions. And, in these small venues, we're not reaching thousands of people, but we're having real meaningful conversations with interested people or people who are interested in the community. And that's how we've made a good amount of progress, head on one engagement in local coffee shops and restaurants.
That
Two, as you alluded to, we also did digital marketing, right? So we're not talking about just marketing sites or our location, but we marketed what the IDA is, who are the board members, what can we do, what have we done, and really put it in simple terms. We don't talk about, these lofty, uniform tax exempt policy and criteria for evaluation of projects. We talk about this is a board made up of local community members who have one goal: to benefit the town of Montgomery, to attract projects that create jobs to the local community and secure investment in the community. So the head-on grassroots engagement, the direct marketing, and then building formal and informal networks. So we have open lines of communications with members of the community. We respond to emails. We set up phone calls with community members. We're just present. And I think those three prongs is how we built some coalitions, how we built some important relationships with people who have been, not necessarily supportive of the IDA. And, it's been an important, I think, process for our agency.
That's wonderful. And I love the idea of the coffee conversation. In our case, I've found, I'm the marketing and communications director for the ECIDA, and I've really found that the most effective advertising, marketing, and communication venues, I guess, or avenues are one-on-one, or at least some kind of two-way, whether it's a panel, a Q&A kind of town hall setup, something that allows the community members or even lawmakers or business people, developers, to ask those questions. And let's face it, saying, hey, everybody, we're going to talk about our UTEP, the Uniform Tax Exemption Policy, which for anybody listening who isn't aware, that's kind of the guidelines. So when you have a county IDA or statewide, we do have a uniform kind of outline of how we're doing these tax incentive programs. And they're available on everybody's website. You can go to eccidany.com and look under policy, and you can find our UTEP. And I'm sure you guys at the town of Montgomery, you guys probably have yours posted, right? I think we're required by law to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I love that because I've found that very often people's questions, they sort of understand part of what we do or part of how it works, but there's that missing connection piece. And then someone says, well, wait a minute, where does the money come from for a pilot, for example? And then that's an opportunity for us in the IDA world to say, well, there isn't really a pot of money. These are taxes that are created in the future by a project after it's completed. So if the project doesn't get completed, the taxes don't exist. And once people start to understand that, they go, oh, okay. And obviously it's a little more complicated than that. But I hope you don't mind. I'm going to steal that for us.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. You should patent that whole process.
No, it's been that coffee and conversations process was, quite frankly, pretty meaningful. I mean, not only building these informal relationships with members of the community, and most of them who come are either going to be somewhat curious or the people who are opposed to the IDA. So that gives you a chance for the one to just build that interpersonal relationship, and two, to fight some of the misconceptions that people have about IDAs. I mean, I think some people think we write checks to companies. I've had questions like that asked before, and I think it's just a lot of fundamental misunderstanding about what we do, and that's totally fine because IDAs are confusing, organizations.
Right.
A lot of people, it's tough to follow. We're public benefit organizations, quasi government, but I think by sitting down with people informally, not at a board meeting where someone has to come up to a microphone, but having a cup of coffee, talking about IDAs, and showing the person that, look, we're just here to benefit the community, and these IDAs keep our community competitive. When we're working to attract a company, they can go to Pennsylvania or New Jersey, or they could go down south, which we see often. And IDAs, I like to say, keep communities competitive, and we just have to do a better job of explaining how. And
Yes.
I think the math and the case studies are there to show that that's exactly what IDAs do.
Can you share with us an example of a conversation that you had at one of these events where you really were able to reach someone and maybe even change the mind of someone who had been opposed to policy or had a different opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few that stand out to me. But at these meetings, like I mentioned, a lot of people who come are the people who are generally opposed to IDAs.
Right.
So I've had a lot of that, right? And one person in particular came in and sat down with a laundry list of questions and comments about why the IDA doesn't need to exist and what we're doing wrong. And they said, look, you give pilots to companies and you don't even monitor the jobs that they create. It's you're giving the taxpayers' money away without, making sure they follow up
A big
on their
misconception.
promises.
Yeah, that's a big
Right.
misconception. Right.
And at that moment, and you and I know, IDAs are policed by both the Office of the State Comptroller and the Authority Budgets Office, the ABO.
Mm-hmm.
And every year we need to submit job creation numbers with our parish reporting. That's the Public Authorities Reform Act. So every year we're following up and checking in on these projects to make sure they lived up to their promises. And if, and people say, these companies are just going to pick up and leave after their pilot. And in the town of Montgomery, we've never experienced a company, any of our projects, when their pilots end, leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the auditing and the reporting requirements that I really stressed, and they said, wow. So we are getting our return on investment, and we are making sure they stick to their promises, and absolutely IDAs by law are required to make sure that companies are keeping their promises, and if not, there are recourse, there are options to protect the community, whether it be, recapture or other means to protect the community. Bottom line is IDAs give an incentive, and in return, companies need to live up to their promises, and we make sure they do.
Right. We definitely have a responsibility for the taxpayers. We have to be good stewards because even though there isn't a pot of money where these things come out of, they're involved, and that's why
Right.
we deal with school districts and other taxing jurisdictions, and they're involved in the process. And I would like to make an observation. I'm interested in your thoughts about this. A lot of people assume that someone who is opposed to an IDA or someone who has some kind of an issue with the way IDAs work, they assume that that's some kind of barrier to economic growth. But I actually see it in the reverse. I see a lot of the people who attend our public meetings or come to a board meeting to observe or tune in. We have to live stream everything now, so they tune into a policy committee meeting, for example, and I think that they are probably more community minded and involved than than a lot of other people. So I think that it's a great
Mhm.
opportunity when they come and voice their opposition or voice their opinions. It's a great opportunity, as you said, to have that conversation and to say, well, wait a minute, here's where your opinion isn't based on fact. It's based on an assumption or maybe something that was
Right,
true 10 years ago, because I think
right.
there's been a lot of beneficial reform. But and we're almost out of time, but in these last few minutes, if you would talk a little bit about some of the projects where you've basically won over people like that person who came with the laundry list, right? With
Right.
explaining the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and to follow up on your point, the people who come, and even if they're opposed to IDA projects, they play an important role. I mean, they just care about their community. They want to make
Absolutely.
sure we're being good stewards. And I think IDAs everywhere welcome that kind of, opinion and that kind of engagement in their community. It's great to see, even if we don't agree. It's great to see because everybody's just trying to benefit the community.
Right.
So I totally agree with you on that. And there have been projects where, and this well, it's tough to win people over. But what we can do and what we try to do at the Town of Montgomery IDA is just explain the facts. We will sit down with people who are particularly vocal and have a conversation. And even if we're not winning anyone over on projects, we're having that conversation. They understand that there is a benefit to this project. And even if they don't agree with the location or like the company, they can see that, okay, this is going to be new payments to the taxing jurisdictions because this farm or this piece of land that sat vacant for years that was paying $3,000 in taxes is now going to pay $1 million in pilot payments to the taxing jurisdictions.
Right.
Now there's going to be 500 jobs. These are people that are going to spend money at the local pizza shop. They're going to go to the coffee shop. So there's that spin-off factor. So I wouldn't say we try to win people over, but I would say we try to objectively educate. We try to show the positives of the project, and also, we're objective about the negatives if there are any.
Hmm.
And then we need to display, and we try to display that spin-off factor that there's going to be 500 people working at this facility. They're going to be making $50,000-$60,000 a year. They're going to want to go get dinner after work. They're going to want to buy a home in the town of Montgomery. So we try to explain the externalities, both good and bad. And even if we can't win them over, they know that the agency is trying to take on a project that benefits the greater community.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Everybody just wants the best community that we can possibly have. And sometimes there's the misunderstanding. Sometimes it's a legitimate concern. If someone is, lives on a street and there's a big factory that they want to build across the street, that homeowner has a legitimate interest in what's going on in his or her neighborhood. And yeah, I think that the education factor, I like that. It's not about winning them over, but rather making sure that they at least understand the correct benefits and the correct process that's happening in front of them. And you brought up a great point, which is the extrapolated economic benefit, the goods and services and things, and the payroll. I've been working for the IDA for about 7 years now, and I've long been saying we need to make sure that the community understands how much payroll money, because that if you work for a
Right.
company, you are spending most of that money locally. As you said, you live
Yeah.
here, you eat here, you go to the gas station and you grocery shop and everything else. So
Hmm.
when you look at some of these payroll numbers, you realize that maybe it's a $2 million incentive package, so they're getting a future discount of $2 million on sales tax or property taxes, et cetera, for a limited time. However, maybe it's $1 million or $2 million in payroll every year. 10 years later, that's $20 million into the community. So
Right.
I think that once you kind of explain that concept, people realize, oh, that's what private investment means. That's what it does, right, for our community. And what's your as we close out here, what's your website so people can check out? You have a wonderful website. Check out the Town of Montgomery IDA.
Yes, so we are montgomeryida.com. montgomeryida.com. And you'll see we have a tab on why the town of Montgomery, our policies, our financials. Any question that you have, like your website, you can get an answer on the website generally. And thank you for asking. This has been an important conversation, and I'm excited to see where you go with this podcast. I'm sure it's going to be a big hit. I'll be listening.
Thank you. And thanks for being one of our early guinea pigs. We appreciate your stepping in these uncharted waters here. But we want to thank everyone for listening. And once again, our website is ECIDANY, like Erie County IDA, New York, .com. And you can find all kinds of information about us on there, and also about this very podcast, wherever you're listening. So I'm Robbie Ann McPherson. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director for the ECIDA in Buffalo. And I want to thank CONOR ECKERT from the Town of Montgomery Industrial Development Agency. He's their Executive Director. So thanks, CONOR, for joining me and for helping people understand that, yes, we actually do good work at the IDA.
we do good well. I'll say that. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.